What is up, guys? I am Ace.
This is RB3.
And this is the Meaning of Podcast. Today, we are breaking down the career and the life of one of the legendary directors, Mr. John Singleton.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, if you haven't heard already, he passed away last week. It was a sudden.
51 years old.
Yeah, it was a sudden passing. Yeah, like you just said. How old was he? Say that again. 51 years old. Yeah, it was a very sudden passing. It broke a lot of hearts because he's one of the most influential filmmakers in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Opened a lot of doors, established a lot of change, and I feel like it's important to honor his memory, honor his legacy, and the best way to do that for us is because we are a director's podcast, and what we do is we break down different directors' filmographies, is to break down his filmography, but also break down his influence and what he meant to Hollywood and what he meant to so many people. This is something that RB3 recommended because you said you were inspired by John Singleton.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was John Singleton and his story that inspired me to, for one, pursue film school, and for two, to like make USC my aspirations to go there. Obviously, John Singleton was a USC graduate, and pretty much he, at the time, one of the very few black students there. He was a screenwriting major, and if you don't know, USC Film School, particularly a screenwriting program, it's hard to get accepted there, and then comparatively, like statistically, to like Harvard Law School, So it was very big. It's a very big thing. And John Singleton, being somebody who's from South Central, who's from LA, his story is connected, very largely to me and my community growing up. So I grew up on movies like Boys in the Hood, grew up on movies like Baby Boy and Poetic Justice. So they're all very much close and connected to my path. And like I said, like John Singleton, I read back in high school, there's a story about, that I'm not sure if it was Hollywood Reporter, if it was Variety, but they wrote a whole story about how he, went to USC, and pretty much right after he got out, he made Boys in the Hood. And the reason that happened is because while he was in college, he was working as a security guard for Lawrence Fishburne, and kind of handed him the script like in between times and whatnot. So it's really inspirational story. So that's what really inspired me to get into film and everything.
So he's one of the reasons why you want to be a director.
Honestly, yeah, straight up. And I mean, I've always been into film. I always wanted to be in the film. And the movies of John Singleton have always just been constant movies that like played throughout my household as a kid, particularly Boys in the Hood and Baby Boy. Were big ones. But even Four Brothers was the first R-rated movie I ever saw in theaters. My dad took me to see that. Too Fast, Too Furious, obviously. I'm a big Fast and Furious fan, so that's a big impact as well. But all of his films speak very much to who I am as a film lover and a film goer. So
that's good.
And his career path is one that I aspired and still aspire to follow. So
that's great, man. That's good to hear. Before we get into it, I kind of want to paint the scale and kind of really show what he meant to so many people by reading a few reactions from his passing last week. The first one I have up right here is from Samuel L. Jackson, a legend already. He says, mourning the loss of a collaborator and true friend, John Singleton. He blazed a trail for many young filmmakers, always remaining true to who he was and where he came from. R.I.P. brother, gone way too soon.
Obviously Sam Jackson and John Singleton were in Shaft. They collaborated on the remake of Shaft, which we'll get to as well.
Janae Monet said, John Singleton, he's a genius. Thank you for capturing the U.S. like no other. Thank you for capturing us like no other. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. I think that's a big sentiment, right, is that he was always keen on putting not just being, he felt that responsibility of being a black filmmaker and putting, the African American culture to the forefront and bringing in different ideas and different perspectives on film.
Well, yeah, I mean, all of his films, I think, is a through line through his filmography is very sympathetic to people from the hood, people from communities like Compton or South Central, because it shows you the lifestyle that a lot of these people live and how tragic, it could be sometimes, how sad it could be sometimes, how happy it could be sometimes. It really, honestly, all of his films paint a very honest picture of South Central, of LA, of the hood in general, of the community that John Singleton came from. So
Yeah.
That's definitely a big thing throughout his filmography.
Jordan Peele says, R.I.P. John Singleton. So sad to hear. John was a brave artist and a true inspiration. His vision changed everything. Interesting to hear from Jordan Peele because he's another filmmaker who has been very outspoken by saying, I'm making movies for black people. I'm making movies that have black people in it. That's going to be my main character. Every single one of my movies is going to have that perspective. That's a statement he made that obviously riled up a lot of people, and wrongly so, because people don't understand that. But that's a responsibility that a lot of people have and a perspective that a lot of people had. And someone like a John Singleton might have been one of those people who had that perspective. I've been very outspoken by saying this as well. But if I ever get into production, producer role, executive producer, director, if I do anything like that, I'm gonna make. And I told you, and I've said it many times on this podcast, I'm going to hire Latinos. I'm going to put Latinos in the forefront. I'm going to make Latinos the main character because that's what I feel, that's what I want to deliver to Hollywood. That's what I want to show. And that's what Jordan Peele has said. And he's saying that's a direct inspiration from John Singleton, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think even beyond just showing black people, I think John Singleton was focused on, showing, like I said, hood culture, right? Showing people who are struggling to get in these struggling in situations and struggling in these environments in South Central LA, and kind of share the hardships that these people endure. I mean, there's a whole genre in film that's called the problem film, right? That's like this old genre that is all about depicting the hardships mostly black people have faced in history, and that's a genre that birthed in like the 1950s, 1960s that focused on a lot of these problems, but. And in the case of John Singleton, he kind of takes that genre and those films and kind of adapts that and puts a perspective on it from modern hood LA perspective. It's kind of an evolution from like the hip hop music of that time, evolution in telling that and portraying that storytelling on film. So.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
Last one I'll read is from Ava DuVernay, because it's Ava DuVernay, that says, there aren't many of us doing this out here. It's a small tribe in the grand scheme of things. He was a giant among us, kind, committed, and immensely talented. His films broke ground. His films mattered. He will be missed and long remembered. Thank you, John. Run into his arms is the hashtag she used. Yeah, I mean, she also is very outspoken, and she's someone at the forefront to be, what was it, the first African-American woman to have a $100 million budget for a movie.
Oh, yeah.
With Wrinkle in Time, Ava DuVernay.
Well, John Singleton was the first African-American to be nominated for the Best Director's
there you go.
Oscar back in 1992. The film came out in 1991 for Boys in the Hood. And he was, for one, the youngest to ever be nominated at age 24, and also first African American, a category in which black people have still yet to win at the Oscars. But
wow,
yeah,
that's crazy.
Still go unregarded.
Yeah. Let's get into it, man. He went to USC Film School. I kind of want to do a little quick, brief summary of his life. This was post like the superstars like George Lucas and all that, right?
Yeah. I mean that was like the '70s wave of people, but. I mean, at this time there were still people who were going to film school, and that was kind of the movement too. But there's also a lot of people who were just kind of doing it like on their own as well. This is kind of beginning of the independence movement, which I think is something that while Boys in the Hood was not like an independent movie, it was a low budget film that had a very personal, very character driven type of story to it, which kind of made it stand out in the grand scheme of like the late '80s, early '90s. Kind of culture shock that was happening during that time.
Yeah, I mean, that's his. It still baffles me that this is his first movie, 1991, Boys in the Hood. How old was he when he directed this?
He was 22 when he was directing, and he was 23 when the movie was released.
It stars obviously Ice Cube and
Yeah, Ice Cube, Cuba Gooding Jr. Lawrence Fishburne.
I think
Regina King, Regina Hall.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that this is this was Cube coming from that NWA kind of wave, and this was kind of what that idea of putting rappers as actors and putting hip hop culture onto the screen in a different light, right? I mean, that's a huge, bold statement right there, even just the casting and the themes of the movie, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely 100%. I think that obviously Ice Cube was a member of NWA, which Straight Compton was one of the most influential albums of the late '80s, early '90s. It's kind of what put hip hop and gangster rap in particular at the forefront in the mainstream. It caused like such a big controversy. I mean, that was. The release of Straight Compton was one of the most controversial moments in pop culture history because for one, NWA, I don't usually say the N word on this podcast, but I'll go ahead and say it. Niggas with attitude, right? That's what that's what that alone, the title of their group alone caused such an outrage against. I mean, you can even see old clips of like old news reporters saying niggas with attitude. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of crazy. But the biggest reason why they became so popular as a group is because they told the stories yet to be told. They told stories of young black men or young black people faced with the hardships of the reality of their situations. Right, the situations that particularly like Reaganomics and like all of these old institutions kind of put into place, and how a lot of influence also comes too from like the crack epidemic being a big breakout during the 70s and 80s too, which we're going to talk about like at the end of John Singleton's filmography with the show Snowfall.
Yeah, a lot of that has to do with the war on drugs too, which comes from Reagan, right?
Exactly. So it's all of that kind of built up and to create this really systemic like ghetto culture in places like Compton, South Central.
And mass incarceration too.
Mass incarceration, over policing, police brutality, which it was just a big thing that, I mean, these are all themes that Boys in the Hood touches on. Boys in the Hood very much touches on all of the themes that kind of put a lot of black people and a lot of these communities in this situation. And it kind of offers some light and some guidance as to solutions that we can potentially have to overcome these things too. So, but I mean, obviously NWA, that was a big group, and that was a big reason and motivation of telling the story of Boys in the Hood, because literally one of the big songs that Eazy-E first did that Ice Cube wrote was called Boys in the Hood. That's where the title comes directly from. So that's why that kind of the influence of NWA kind of had a big push into making this movie and having that movie be as successful as it was.
Yeah, that's crazy. On a different scale, what does this movie mean, looking back at it? What is the legacy of Boys in the Hood?
But yeah, I think overall the legacy of Boys in the Hood, I think it really introduced a new wave of gangster movies, as people call it. Gangster, I guess, is more affiliated with the more like mobby kind of,
Scarface,
like Scarface, Machine Guns, all that kind of shit. But this is more of this kind of sparked the genre of hood movies such as Menace to Society, Juice, all of these really giant hood movies that kind of took over the wave in the 90s. And a big part of that, a big reason due to that was because of the success of this film and how much of a cultural impact it made. I mean, it made so much more money. It made so much more money than its initial budget that it was one of the most profitable films at its time. It got nominated for a lot of Academy Awards, including Best Director, Best Screenplay. So this is obviously a very successful movie that really catapulted a new genre in film in and of itself.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. It's such a big deal because you're right. It's not the traditional gangster movies. It's not the Godfathers, the Italian mob. It's not the cartels that like we see in Scarface. This is hood. This is L.A. This is Compton. It has its own vibe.
Yeah,
that's a big deal. That really is a big deal because it's about identity, right? Whereas like you see the Italian culture, you see the Latino culture, and now you see like the African American hood lifestyle, Compton.
Right, but he tells the story in a very familiar way. I mean, I don't know if he's like said it himself personally, or if he's credited it, if it's been credited as one of the influences by other people. But this movie is very reminiscent of Stand By Me, right? The Rob Reiner movie that came out. And it even starts with the whole thing that the original Stand By Me kind of started with the whole thing of like a bunch of kids like finding a dead body, but it's reinterpreted and repackaged in the hood sensibility and this community sensibility, where it's like these black kids find a dude who got shot. You know what I mean? It kind of sets the precedent for this coming of age story set in this kind of trying community. So
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about what this movie, what were the nominations that it got again?
I believe it was for best original screenplay and best director. Those are the only two nominations it received. But yeah,
it had freaking Cuba Gooding Jr. Man, this is one of his first, right? I feel like
this is definitely the one that put him on the map.
Yeah,
this movie put a lot of people on the map. Lawrence Fishburne. Morris Chestnut, as well as it was a super up and coming actor.
Yeah,
off of this, it introduced a lot of people to a lot of actors and a lot of community, and Nia Long, obviously, Regina King.
Damn, these are like legends now.
Yeah, these are all
Angela
legends.
Bassett.
But yeah, Angela Bassett, of course. I mean, these are all people.
Fishburne's a legend too, man.
Yeah, of course, Lawrence Fishburne. Yeah, I mean, this was a lower budget like type of film, but he definitely wanted to. But it definitely embodied a lot of characters and actors who kind of went on to become mainstays throughout like '90s like black film and film in general. And I think a big part of that is because of how much of a cultural impact this movie made, how different it was than anything else that came out at the time, And it's interesting looking back on retrospect, because now we see a lot of like hardcore gangster movies, and a lot of the imagery that was adapted, in this movie kind of ended up becoming repurposed in a lot of hip hop music and a lot of hip hop music imagery and videos and all that stuff.
Can you name some specifics that it reminds you of?
I think just a lot of it. I mean, I think there's oh man, I don't think I could pull any off the top, because there's just so many.
You feel like Kendrick could have been someone?
Kendrick is definitely one that takes a lot from this. I mean, I even remember when I was young. This was back in 2013. I lived across the street from like a liquor store back in Compton or whatever, and literally Kendrick Lamar was filming. It wasn't a music video. I think it was a video package for his concert or whatever. But they had like dudes like hanging upside down from like the liquor store, like they're at bats. Like it was crazy, but it's very much, I mean, the Boys in the Hood kind of imagery and style persisted throughout the 90s and throughout the 2000s and throughout all kinds of representation of gangster culture as well. And then you also think about people like F. Gray, right? He was also a big music video director at the time, and he his movie Friday, is built off the back of Boys in the Hood, like almost to an extent. It's like a parody version of it.
Yeah, it is.
So it's all of that. I mean, all throughout hip hop and all throughout the culture, this was kind of a good visualization of West Coast hip hop. West Coast hip hop and West Coast culture during this time period.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's good, man. Not just that, but the fact that his next movie, obviously he worked on Remember the Time, but his next movie is called Poetic Justice too, and this is another classic movie.
Yeah. Well, before you leave Boys in the Hood too, sure. I mean, it's also a lot of times when we think about the character of Ricky, that's also that's kind of, it's not like a John Singleton stand-in, but the character of Ricky is the guy who's trying to win a scholarship to USC because he's a football player, but then he ends up getting shot at the end of the movie, right? Because he's trying to make it out of the environment. Everybody else is trying to push him, push against him and trying, not push against him, but the conditions of his surroundings are all like obstacles for him to like overcome. But the idea of somebody who is trying to pursue USC, who's trying to get out of these situations, who's trying to get out of the hood, and struggling to do that. I mean, that's something that's a common theme through. That's something that's a commonality for a lot of Black people in these situations. A lot of young Black people who genuinely don't want to be involved in gangs and violence and all that, but just the conditions around them kind of force them in those situations.
Yeah.
And you see at the end when Cuba Gooding Jr. Has to make the choice of, does he ride with his boys to kill the dude who killed Ricky, or does he not do that? Does he listen to Furious, his father, or does he what choice does he make? It's very impactful. And I think all of that, and the portrayal of gang culture too is something that resonates largely in why people are influenced to become violent, become in gangs because just the conditions that are around them.
Yeah. Have you seen Friday Night Lights?
I haven't. No,
It's a great
I saw
show.
the movie, but not the show.
The movie's completely different. Yeah, there's a lot of that in there as far as what
The environment.
the environment, what
Yeah.
you're stuck in, trying to escape it using sports, using football.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of inspiration in that. Yeah, but now, man, Poetic Justice.
Yeah.
Not just the song, but the movie. Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah.
Damn, bro,
Good
Janet
song,
Jackson
good
and Tupac.
Yeah. Nah.
This is crazy.
Yeah, no, it's a good cast. I mean,
Yeah.
it's again another example of John Singleton casting a rapper.
Musicians, yeah.
Yeah, musicians in
Yeah,
general. Yeah,
because
with Janet
Ice
Jackson.
Cube, now Tupac,
Yeah.
and damn, that's crazy.
But
What do you think about this one? Looking back at it,
yeah, this one's really cool. Actually, I just got done watching it before
No way.
coming to the show today. And yeah, that one, it's very much more of a feminine perspective on the hood and in that culture,
Which is
a lot
important.
more romantic. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Boys in the Hood had established some of that perspective in that there was that scene where they're all sitting in the car having a conversation about what if God was a woman, and then Ice Cube is like, man, God ain't no bitch or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that he even in Boys in the Hood, he showed a very sympathetic portrayal of the female characters, and I think in this is kind of a furtherization of that. I mean, you see the protagonist, who's played by Janet Jackson, in the beginning of the film, she's on a date with her with a man she's with, and he ends up getting shot, like at the drive-in movie theater or whatever, right? So a lot of the movie is persistent on showing her like mourning process and her ability to try and get over that, not get over it, but her struggle of trying to readjust and trying to get into a new relationship with the Tupac character in this movie is very much. And throughout the film, she's a poet. I mean, it's called Poetic Justice because throughout the film, she's writing poetry that kind of narrates like her feelings and her emotions throughout the film. So it's very much about her voice and her her name is Justice, so that's why the title is Poetic Justice. It's very much about Justice's journey and her struggle to mourn and also find a new life and new love and all that stuff. So it's a very powerful story.
it is, yeah, because it's important to have that, Black women perspective.
Yeah,
like so many people are. I forget my quotes and my lines, but the black women are one of the most neglected people in America.
That was Malcolm X. Yeah.
Malcolm X.
Yeah.
That's what he is. And even what's his face had controversy after he said it. Like a couple months ago, Chance the Rapper, when he said, black women are the most invisible people that don't get seen and don't get believed and don't get heard, and when they cry for help, people don't listen.
Right.
So it's super important to have a perspective like this, and we see movies like this, and I feel like there's so many other examples of black women being the moral centerpiece of a movie, right? The moral epicenter of the male characters, of decisions being made. I can quote so many movies. Like the first one that comes to mind is what's that freaking movie? The one that won an Oscar for Best 3 years ago. But Janelle Monáe, her character.
Moonlight.
Yeah. Janelle Monáe's character in that movie.
Yeah.
Is like the moral epicenter, the one keeping the shit together.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You bring up Moonlight, you bring up Barry Jenkins. Obviously, Barry Jenkins is also one of the few black directors who's been nominated for Best Director. And for, when we talk about Moonlight, I remember when we first saw Moonlight.
We saw it together.
And I was like, I didn't really like it as much.
Yeah, and I was on the same boat. I was like, it was okay.
Yeah, but for me, it was very much like I felt like that movie. I wanted that movie to have more of a Boys in the Hood type feel, more of a naturalistic, realistic, because that's also like a staple through John Singleton's filmography. He paints a very realistic, a very like straightforward portrayal of the hood, of gang violence, of the streets. You know what I mean? It's very straightforward. It's very realistic, and I thought, for me, Moonlight, I thought that I wanted it to be more of that, but that's more of a more like artistic piece. Is more of a more visually formalistic type of thing, which is totally cool in its own right. Like as I grew up, come to really like and enjoy that movie.
It's also just to put a little extra in there. It's also the LGBT kind of connection in there.
Right. I mean, but and when we talk about higher education or higher learning, that's also a theme that plays into that film as well. But with Poetic Justice, as I'm comparing Moonlight to Boys in the Hood, I compare Poetic Justice a lot to If Beale Street Could Talk, right? And it's very like poetic kind of structure is kind of guided through narration, but it's
If Beale Street's literally a poem.
No, exactly, and the poems in this film that were written, for Angela Bassett to read in her voiceovers, are actually written by Maya Angelou, who is one of the historic, African American writers and poets and everything like that. So it's very much, this film is very, very in touch and influenced by everything, and it becomes a road trip movie. I mean, it's about these kids. They kind of take a road trip up to like Oakland. Tupac's character in Justice, like after the first act and everything, they kind of take a trip to Oakland, and Regina King's in there as well with her boyfriend named Chicago. It's played by Joe Torre. So it's a very, Boys in the Hood is more of like an intense, like very much like, horror shit. Like this is a horror movie, it's a gangster movie. This one's more of a romantic movie, so it's a lot less intense. But it's a very, where it lacks in like, I guess, intense like violent conflict, it makes up for romantic conflict, and kind of comparing and contrasting the ideology and the and the differences between the Lucky, who's the Tupac character, and Justice, who's the woman character.
Was this 1983, man? I think about Janet Jackson and I think about Tupac Shakur. Were they in their prime? I feel like 95 is when this was this helping Tupac's career.
Well, this was Tupac was he was looking to be both an actor and a rapper too, right? And that's it's kind of ironic because a lot of people today look back on Tupac and like will remark that he was never really like truly a gangster. You know what I mean? A lot of times people look back and when they reflect on Tupac, they acknowledge the fact that he was, he was kind of putting on more of a performance, like the Hood kind of performance that he was putting on. Because in real life, he was very poetic, in the same way that Justice is in this movie. Yeah. He's very, not to say that he wasn't involved in some street shit. I'm sure he was. I don't want to disrespect Tupac's legacy. You know what I mean? But
definitely don't.
But the whole perception, the perception of him is that he was less gangster, but it was a little bit more of an act. So acting in movies, that's why people say he would have been a better actor. He wouldn't know, like if he was still alive now, people say he would have been better known as an actor than a rapper. Because
what do you think of his performance?
I think he's great. I think he's great. Yeah, I think he's solid.
He's been in other stuff too, though, right?
Yeah. He was in Juice, which was another big Hood movie.
Yeah, you're right. He was trying to blend that actor rapper. Think about it now. Think about how many actor rappers we have now.
Yeah,
and we've had throughout the years.
Will
Smith, Donald Glover is crazy right now.
But it's funny. I don't know if you knew this, but Tupac actually auditioned to play Mace Windu for the prequels. Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah. He met with George and everything. Yeah,
that's wild.
Yeah. It could have been him.
I know. Sam is in there though, and Sam was like, I think George was cool with Sam too, though.
Yeah. Of course. But it's interesting thinking he auditioned.
That's crazy. Yeah.
But in terms of Janet Jackson, she was also a musical, artist as well, and the song that came from this movie was actually nominated for the Academy Award for Best Original Song. The year it came out, so
that's crazy, man. Yeah, looking back at it, it really does have a pretty huge impact.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's jump to Higher Learning, 1995.
Yeah,
freaking Busta, man. Busta's in this movie. Yeah, what's going on?
Well, there's a lot of people.
There's a lot of people in this movie.
Obviously, Ice Cube returns.
Yeah, Tyra Banks is in this movie.
Yeah. Omar Epps is kind of the breakout. And
Omar Epps, you're right. Omar Epps is damn, dude, this guy, he's been in a lot.
Omar Epps is great. And then Michael Rappaport, this is This is a very different performance from Michael Rappaport.
You're right, Michael Rappaport.
Yeah. Nah, that's
crazy. Wild, man. Looking back at this one, what do you feel about it?
Well, this one,
and break it down for someone who might not know about it.
Right. Okay. So this one is about this kind of fictional college called Columbia University, and the whole idea is that it follows a few freshmen who are like just coming into this college. The Omar Epps character, whose name is Malik, he's like a track runner, and a girl Christy, who's like kind of shy, and she's played by Christy Swanson or whatever. I guess she was from Buffy. I think she's from Buffy.
Yeah.
And then the Remy guy.
The movie Buffy, but yeah.
The movie Buffy, yeah. And Remy, who is played by Michael Rappaport, who's like this. At first, you think he's just a lonely guy, but then he starts getting entangled with some skinheads, and things kind of go awry, So it's a tough movie. I mean, this movie is a lot about the college experience, particularly looking at it from not Michael Epps. Omar Epps' character's perspective is very much like about the being black and going to a predominantly white college, PWI, predominantly white institution. I mean, that's why I've been going to for the past 3 years, going to USC. I mean, but it's very realistic. You know what I mean? It's very much like that's really how it is.
Sure.
So it tackles that from that perspective. It tackles Kristen's character, who she plays both sides. She's bisexual, so she is dating both a man and a woman in this movie. And then Michael Rappaport's character, like I said, he kind of, he's kind of shy and lonely, and then like as time devolves, he starts hanging out with some skinheads, and at the end of the day, I mean, this movie at the end, it really doesn't reveal itself for being what it actually is. It's very much a film about school shootings, and because it ends with there being a shooting at the end of the film, so it's very much a film about school shootings and like. Particularly during that time, there was Columbine. I think was coming out was around that time, if I'm not mistaken. Columbine might have happened later. I'm not 100%.
I think
sure.
It happened later.
Yeah, but it's crazy. I mean, this movie was so far ahead of its time. It kind of played with those. It kind of played with that whole idea of school shootings and psychos and crazy people and skinheads being responsible for this stuff way before this stuff even started really happening. Now, I mean, watching now, it feels like very of the moment, very of the time. But back then it was
crazy.
Like crazy.
How much of the time it is?
Yeah.
Just last week. What was it? Last week that we had the mosque shooting?
Oh yeah.
No,
yeah. I think I don't know. There's just so many shootings, man.
Here in California, though. Here, like right out to like 2 hours from here.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. It's impossible to keep up with these days.
It's all crazy right wing, extreme right wing, crazy dudes. Shooting up places. But yeah, I mean, obviously, it has a lot to do with race as well.
Yeah.
And like you said, the college experience having to do with race.
Right.
Yeah, it's incredible the amount of people in this movie. What do you think throughout so far in his career? His tone. What is Singleton's tone? Can you nail that down just with these 3 movies?
His tone. I mean, I feel like his tone is kind of with his style, right? It's very much like realistic, very matter of fact, very much this is how it is. It's kind of weird because it's tough because some of his movies and the music that's used in some of the scenes kind of play with kind of like an optimistic kind of vibe, kind of like I think to the opening of Poetic Justice, how it's showing a fake movie on screen, so it opens with like this like fake like romantic music and everything, and then immediately you see somebody like get shot like within that very scene, in this movie there's also a lot of that. There's like this very like romanticized kind of idea, kind of very classical Hollywood-ish, like this kind of romantic start to a movie, and then your expectations like getting subverted once you start seeing what the movie's like actually about.
Yeah.
So I think that's an overarching tone and style choice that happens throughout his movies. I think a lot of his movies are very much like very matter of fact, very gritty, very realistic. But I think, I think a lot of his films are, about maturing too, to some extent too, right? I think maybe not in the textual film like kind of perspective, but I mean, just looking at the body of his filmography, I mean, Boys in the Hood is about like high school, people are just getting ready to leave high school, seniors in high school. Poetic Justice is also about like that same age group, same period. This is about some freshmen, this is about freshmen in college, It's about, a lot of his films are like coming of age stories that are kind of set in hood environments and hood situations. This one not so much. Higher Learning not so much, but one of the kids, the character of the character of Malik is from those kind of situations. That's why he's a track runner, So it's very much it's interesting. They all play with like very different kind of ideas and tones and styles. But I think the main thing that was overarching his films is like realistic, matter of fact kind of thing.
Yeah, which is good, man.
Yeah.
But kind of countering that, he does something completely different with Rosewood, which is kind of a period piece.
Yeah, I haven't seen. So I don't know as much about that one.
I've seen a little bit of it, and it reminds me a little bit of what American Gods is doing. I know no one watches that show. Have you seen American Gods?
I haven't seen that one,
no. So American Gods did an episode a couple weeks ago about this horrific, back in the 30s or something, but I think this one takes place in the 20s, as far as like mob lynches, like straight up, like when white people would go crazy, accuse a black guy of, raping a girl or something like that.
Yeah.
And then just do like literally like a mob beating, shooting, lynching, like the most awful racist type stuff that we've, heard stories about. And that's a little bit of what Rosewood is, but it's some real dark stuff in there, the bit I've seen. And the stuff that we've seen in that I've seen in American Gods was pretty dark as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is based on a real life tragedy that happened in Florida back in 1923, and I think that's very much that's very much a prevalent thing that happened back in America during that time.
Yeah, and it's interesting because he wants to, as someone who's looking at this from afar, Singleton's career. He wants to show you these different perspectives. So he does the Boys in the Hood. He does the Poetic Justice, the Higher Learning. Follows that up with something horrific like a Rosewood, which kind of shakes you up.
Yeah.
And then follows that up with Shaft in 2000, bro.
Yeah.
What do you think about Shaft looking back at it? Samuel L. Jackson.
Well, Shaft is a perfect example of like the modern day blaxploitation, right? Like
that's exactly what it is.
It's a remake of the original blaxploitation.
What year was the original? Do you remember?
1971, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 71. I see it right here.
Shaft is one of those iconic characters. I mean, when you look at the kind of the tropes and the kind of stereotypes that come with blaxploitation, is very much usually about the strong black man who's against the man who's against the establishment, who comes out, he sleeps with all the hot women, and his fight is usually against a white person that is reflected in a metaphor of, that's a bigger reflection of the man, the establishment, the person that is holding us down. And usually by the side of the establishment character, you see the side black character who's like the side villain, who is who's teamed up with the establishment, teamed up with the man too. So that's the Jeffrey Rice character in this version of the movie too. Blaxploitation is a very popular thing. I mean, Tarantino, is someone who's appropriated it a lot throughout his filmography.
It's supposed to be like the over-the-top black guy, badass kind of guy who just, can kill someone with his pinky or some stuff like that. Like,
just shoot him up.
Guns.
And I mean, that's what, that's what Tarantino kind of brought the genre.
How do you feel about that now? The more you think about Tarantino kind of using that. You're cool with it. You love Tarantino.
I like Tarantino a lot. Yeah. And I think Tarantino is actually, I don't say he's the best about like cultural appropriation, because he culturally appropriates a lot.
Yeah.
But for the most part, Tarantino does get what blaxploitation. At the end of the day, a lot of times he gets what blaxploitation is about. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times his movies, while they are appropriating, they do, like Django is a really strong black character who's really dope. Samuel L. Jackson's character in Hateful Eight, at the end of the day, he's the last character alive. And Jackie Brown is a very much an homage to Foxy Brown and all that stuff, and which goes to show again, like the kind of the circle of hip hop, right? Like a lot of hip hop artists were directly inspired by the iconography of blaxploitation, right? I mean, Foxy Brown, the rapper Foxy Brown took her name directly from the character Foxy Brown from the movie starring Pam Grier back in the 70s. Shaft inspired a lot of iconography for a lot of hip hop artists during that time. And a lot of people credit blaxploitation for the kind of image that hip hop represents right now in terms of the gangster kind of image.
Yeah.
But the one thing that this movie doesn't really explore as much, the new Shaft movie at least, doesn't really explore as much in terms of blaxploitation is the idea of sex, right? There is a quote that John Singleton had saying that the one battle he kind of lost with the producers was over how much sex there was going to be like in this movie, because he said the producers like Scott Rudin and the other executives, he said in quotes, they said they didn't want to offend any women, they didn't want to offend anybody, So that's very much like, it's very much, that's the part of blaxploitation that's kind of taken out. But
yeah,
I mean, you could look at sex, through other John Singleton films. I mean, going back to Higher Learning featured the character Kristen, who was bisexual, but also in that movie, she goes to a frat party and gets date raped. So it very much, John Singleton's never afraid to explore like the harshness and the kind of cruelty of sexuality, but and particularly with blaxploitation, it's a lot about the sex is tied into like the portrayal of like the black masculinity,
the machismo,
like the machismo and all that stuff. So
yeah,
but that was kind of cut down significantly and Shaft. But honestly, it's honestly a really strong remake.
Yeah.
Compared to other blaxploitation movies.
How do you feel like they're making a sequel for it?
That's a little weird.
Yeah.
That's a little weird. But I think,
you seen the trailer for it?
I didn't see a trailer for it.
You haven't seen the trailer? It's been everywhere.
I don't want to. I don't want to see. If it was Brandon T. Jackson is the new guy, I don't hate him. I don't hate the guy, but I don't know about this being the Shaft or whatever. But
if you see the trailer, you'll see something significant.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he plays like a very specific type.
Is it like a parody type shit? Or?
Yeah, he's playing like the clumsy, like Carlton character, for lack of a better word.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah, it's a very bold choice. I was kind of shocked to see it because he's like, what's going on, Dad? I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
And he's very like Carlton-esque, for lack of a better word. I don't know. It's a bold move.
It should also be said about Shaft being one of the two villain roles that Christian Bale played during this time period.
That's
he
right.
was in American Psycho in 2000, and he was also in this movie.
Yeah.
In the year 2000 as well.
Shout out to Bale, man.
Yeah, Christian Bale.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is again like a really strong, I hate to bring up Tarantino again, but as opposed to a Tarantino who just kind of appropriates the genre and doesn't really have any commentary on it, Shaft is a movie that does provide some commentary, some perspective on what black masculinity really means, and is that even an up-to-date kind of ideology to like kind of possess anymore.
Interesting.
I mean, this movie kind of tackles that very, very, very not very like not all the time, not very directly, but I think there are subtle hints throughout the movie that kind of address that as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Baby Boy.
Yeah.
2001.
Yeah.
Starting my homie Tyrese.
Now this is one of the this is my second favorite out of John Singleton's
Tyrese, bro. Talk to me about Tyrese Gibson, man.
Yeah, Tyrese. Well, this is again him bringing another music star.
That's so true.
To the movies, you know what I mean?
I mean, Snoop is in this movie too.
Yeah, it's a smaller part.
It's a smaller part.
Yeah.
Taraji P. Henson, the legendary Taraji P. Now.
Yeah. This is her film debut as well.
Yeah, man. I mean, this guy is really If there's any legacy for Singleton, it's that. It's bringing in all these people and making them stars, right? I mean, that's got to be one of his most predominant factors.
Yeah, right.
Finding talent. That's a big deal. I think it's a big deal.
Yeah. And this movie was supposed to star Tupac originally, but Tupac got shot and died in '96. So Singleton kind of put this movie on hold, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was.
Talk to me why it's one of your favorites.
To me, this is just. I mean, to me, it's just crazy how real this movie like actually is. You know, it's about this guy named Jody who's played by Tyrese, who still lives at home with his mom's pretty much. Is mostly unemployed, and is, you know, his mom's dating this dude named Melvin, who's played by Vin Rames, where like all the like great memes come from, or great gifs, you know,
the over the top Vin Rames, like literally by being his size, that guy's huge. But yeah, keep going.
And then, but it's mostly about, you know, the character Jody and his girlfriend Yvette, right? And their relationship and their struggles. And him and Jody trying to grow up and be a man in the hood, you know, where he's already kind of faced with a lot of arrested development with the community like around him, you know. So it's very. I mean, it's a tough movie. I mean, yeah, it starts off with it was kind of dream sequence of him imagining like his own birth, right? Like and how he's kind of still stuck as a baby, and he, you know, stuck as a baby in his mom's womb, even as a grown man, and to the fact where he's like literally living with his mom and having to deal with that, and you know he has a kid in and of himself with Yvette. I'm sorry, not with Yvette. I might be getting that wrong. No, he has a kid with another woman, but he cheats. But he cheats on his baby mama. He cheats on Yvette with his baby mama like pretty regularly, you know. So it's like, it's crazy. And it's kind of her struggles dealing with his like shattered like masculinity as well too, right? Because she goes like in the beginning, you see her leaving the clinic after she got an STD from just being with Jody, you know what I mean? So just off of that, or not pregnant. I'm sorry, she's getting an abortion from getting pregnant from Jody.
Yeah. Know? But either way, it deals with that kind of dark shit, that real life shit that can happen.
It's real life shit, but it's also like how much they love each other. You know what I mean? To some extent, how much they are willing to endure with each other, like kind of go through it with each other. So this is honestly like, I feel honestly really bad like describing this movie because I'm not doing a good job at it. But like, it's honestly a movie you should probably watch because it's more of an
experience.
Yeah, it's less of a story per se. I mean, there is a story, there's conflict. But yeah, it's more character. Like
100.
It's kind of hard. I mean, it's hard describing all of Singleton's movies because to me it's just like normal life, but to other people they'll watch it and be like,
a plot and first act, second act, third act.
Yeah. But for me, it just to me his movies always just like feel like home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
what do you think of Tyrese in this?
Tyrese is great. I mean, this is absolutely.
You think it's his best?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't really know what else he's been in.
You know what else he's been in? Too Fast, Too Furious, bro.
Yeah, Too Fast, Too Furious. Man, but
I know. I don't want to jump to that so fast.
But yeah, Baby Boy though. I mean, before we get to that, I mean, it's very much about growing up and very much about that, and you know, and it's very much about, you know, we meet Rudy's character who's Snoop Dogg. His character is just getting out of prison, and is like Yvette's ex, and Yvette's been kind of like being nice to him and keeping communication with him. But once he gets out, like then he's, you know, it's like the whole thing of like prisoners once they get out, they just like lay in your house, like type shit, like, you know what I mean? It's it's very much like, so, you know, it's very much him being added to the picture and wanting to stay with Yvette while Jody's around, and they have a, you know, they have a kid together, and all that stuff. So it's a tough movie. I mean, it's honestly, it's a very real movie. I think that's the best word to describe it. Like,
that's good.
It's very, if you were to watch it, you could imagine very much that these situations are very realistic, even down to like Tyrese and his homeboy, like, you know, stealing dresses so they can make some money off of it, like all of that stuff. You know, it's very much very realistic.
That's good, man. I mean, obviously that's a high recommendation from
absolutely sent
from oh, that's weird. But yeah, man. I mean, I think we have to move on to. What's going on? What's that? It's 2003.
Luda.
What's going on? Too Fast, Too Furious.
Fast, Too Furious.
You remember this song?
Oh man, of course I remember this. Man, this is a throwback right here. It's Luda.
Yeah, let's not get copyrighted.
Copyrighted, yeah.
Either way, man, this is my movie, RB3.
Yeah, this
is the Fast and Furious movie that I've seen the most.
Hey, man.
So I can talk at length about this movie.
Hey, get in
It takes place in Miami, so you got the Cubano feeling, bro. You got that Latino vibe. You got them Puerto Ricans in this movie.
Puerto Ricans.
You do, man. There's a crap ton of Puerto Ricans and Cubans in this movie.
I was going to say Cubans, probably.
Yeah, a lot of Cubans, a lot of Cubanos. When it comes to Miami, bro, it's Cubans, it's Puerto Ricans, and it's Colombians. That's what you see there. And I'm Colombian, so I can rep Miami. I have family there, so I can say that. Yeah, man. What do you think? This movie's crazy. It's so over the top. It's goofy as hell. Tyrese is in this movie. Freaking Eva Mendes is in this movie. Shout out to Ryan Gosling's wife.
Yeah, Ryan Gosling. That's what you referred to. Nah, I mean, even Mendes.
Bro, every time my mom and I talk, because my family loves Ryan Gosling. My brother is like the biggest Ryan Gosling fan. My mom loves Ryan Gosling. Low key, bro. Low key. And I'm saying this now, and I'm sorry for anyone who doesn't agree, but it's my family, so I don't care. Is low key. We rep him because we low key have that little spice in him, bro. We got that little Latino vibe with him. When he spoke in Spanish that one day, my mom was like, "Oh, cool. I see you. Married a Latina woman. All right, we can embrace him, man. He's one of us."
That's funny. That's funny.
Ryan Gosling. We embrace the Canadian he's got a little Latino in him. But yeah, obviously this movie is. Crazy continuation of the Fast and Furious franchise, starring R.I.P. Paul Walker, the great Paul Walker. I enjoyed this movie, man. It's crazy. It's over the top. The third act is ridiculous, but I enjoy the shit out of it, man. That's just me being real.
Yeah,
I love this. It has my favorite. It's got my favorite car in probably of any Fast and Furious movie. With the Skyline. Is it called the Skyline? The Nissan Skyline, with the blue stripes.
Yeah.
The gray car that he drives at the end. You know which one I'm talking about? No? Yes?
No, I don't remember.
Okay.
No.
Either way, it's got my favorite car in it. It's got my favorite Paul Walker in it. I enjoyed this.
I mean, this is Paul Walker's kind of like solo movie.
It is. It's Paul Walker being Paul Walker.
Yeah, 100%.
But Tyrese is a prominent part too. He plays the comedic role, but he's still in this movie a lot. So.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think Tyrese is. I mean, you gotta give Tyrese some praise here. I mean, this is really. We'll put him on the map. This is, in this movie, he's like really a dramatic character.
Yeah.
Like he's really like super serious. Like they just kind of made his character funny in like later movies.
Yeah, but, he's got some funny parts in this.
He does have funny parts, but like when he first starts off, like he's like ready to fight. Like
he's angry.
You
got that from me.
Yeah.
When he said, "You did the stop and stare, right?"
Yeah.
Got that from me.
And that's funny.
Remember that movie?
Me and the Wangers.
I know.
We did a whole
I was mad that you guys did this one without me because I did Fast 7, which I enjoy, but this one's. I would have loved to have done this one.
You would have done this one
because I know so many lines from it. My favorite is from Sucre. I forget his actual name. For anyone who watches Prison Break, you know who I'm talking about. Amari no la calizo, no la casco. The freaking crazy Puerto Rican guy who speaks Spanish. When he's driving the first race, he's like, "I can smell you."
Oh, yeah. I know you're talking about.
My favorite line in all Fast and Furious is, "I can smell you." Because it's ridiculous. And then you got the homegirl who plays Suki. Getting a little bit of that Asian vibes in there. Maybe that's why I like this movie, man. It's because there's so many Latin people in there. There's a little Asian girl in there. You got Ludacris.
You get a good best shot of her, like when she's doing the sign.
Exactly. That's why my brother and I love this movie. But you know what? What's probably the biggest reason? 2003. You are not. I'm telling you, bro. You are not meeting any bigger fan of Ludacris than me and my brother.
No, really.
My brother raised me on Luda. Like every album, like Chicken and Beer, like all these albums, like of Ludacris, my brother like raised me on that. That's all I heard in my household was Ludacris. Even though he's crazy, as far as like his lyrics go, for someone who's like, I was like 9 or 10, not 10, I was like 11 when this movie was coming out. But still, like It's crazy. That's one of the reasons why we were drawn to it, was because of the soundtrack and because of the song. But
Yeah.
maybe that's why I enjoy it, man, because it has Latino hip hop and then a crazy white guy leading the movie, driving fast cars.
But it's crazy because this really came out. I say this all the time, but like when we talked about our Michael Bay episode, like this movie came out like very much during the time of Bad Boys 2. All About the Benjamins with Mike Epps and Ice Cube. This movie, they're all like these like Miami set like black crime movies, black starring like crime movies.
You're right.
And it kind of fits like perfectly into that.
It does.
Yeah,
it's
like
so
the
true.
early 2000s black Miami movies.
This is what I meant by the skyline.
Oh, that one.
That's my favorite.
Okay.
Out of the franchise. It also has the spider in this movie.
They put that
remember
one.
The spider?
The spider.
You remember that? Man, that car. Because I remember
the one with like the top and shit.
Yeah. Here it is, the spider. This is the one that he drives. Friggin' Tyrese drives this car.
Yeah.
That car was huge back in this time, man. Back when Mitsubishi was trying to pop stuff off.
Yeah.
But yeah, my family's a huge car. Like I told you, my dad's a mechanic, my brother's a mechanic. Like cars is what we grew up on. Like the car culture, and that it still has a little bit of the hip hop culture in there.
Yeah.
That was the kind of vibe I grew up with in my household.
What's up?
Even though I was never a part of it. But still, that's why this movie means so much to someone like me, because I remember that's more nostalgic for me. But you're right, man. It does have that kind of Miami crime vibe, undercover cop.
Yeah.
Because that's what Brian is. He's an undercover cop. And we also get the classic love interest of Eva Mendes and her kind of playing the two sides of the cartel.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was gonna say. Like when you look at like
it's very Bad Boys.
Yeah,
right. It is very Bad Boys.
When you look at, I mean, Eva Mendes wasn't all about the Benjamins.
Yeah, she was.
So that's very much.
She's playing her stereotype.
Yeah, she's in that part. But that's I mean, honestly, like. Good for them, I honestly, I went to Miami for spring break, and
what'd you think, bro?
That was dope, man.
This is as crazy as people say.
I could totally see why you'll make an action movie there. Like, it's too nice.
Yeah.
As I personally thought it was too similar to LA to like really enjoy it.
Got it.
Just like very much like in terms of the
the culture.
The culture, yes. More so the architecture. Like we stayed in downtown Miami.
Yeah.
And it was very reminiscent of like downtown LA. Even to the point of like if you take 2 steps down like a block, you're back in the hood, I was like, oh, this is LA. This is Compton right here, man. It's called Broward County, like Broward County right next to
all
Miami.
The brown and black people, you're like, oh, come on. I get this back home, bro. Yeah. People speaking Spanish everywhere.
Yeah, well, it was all Cubans.
That's what I'm saying.
That's the difference between
different Spanish, bro. It's so different. But it's funny how I can walk, especially in my neighborhood right now, I can walk to like the grocery store in my neighborhood and no one speaks English.
Yeah. Honestly,
it's so funny to me.
That's how it goes. It's LA.
It is LA, man. But I don't know. I dig this movie. Shout out to Little Chris for throwing parties in this movie because that's all he does.
Yeah.
He literally just throws parties and claims to fix cars.
I love the part at the end when all the cars come out, like as they're like when they're trying to disguise. And that's a lie. I don't know if that's like a realistic way to get out that situation.
It's not. It's really not. Remember the EMP bullets that the little missiles that they attach to the cars, and it's like it freezes the cars. I thought that was kind of cool.
That was dope too.
And then obviously the great finale of jumping off the yacht into the yacht.
Yeah. That's funny.
It's so ridiculous. I love this movie, man.
Yeah.
Shout out to freaking. It's got my favorite ever song in this movie. What?
That's funny.
All right, we're moving on from Too Fast, Too Furious because every three's had enough.
Nah, that's a good one.
Four Brothers, man. This is another one that's. This is it his two probably? I don't know. Is it his 2 biggest movies box office wise? Too Fast and then Four Brothers.
I mean, quite possibly.
Because Four Brothers was huge.
Yeah.
Everyone saw that movie. I feel like everyone saw that movie.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. Like this was my first R-rated film that I remember seeing as a kid.
Yeah.
And obviously Marky Mark is in it.
Andre
3000.
How do you feel about Mark Wahlberg, man? A lot of people have hot takes on him.
Hot takes? What's the hot take about Mark Wahlberg?
I don't know. Some people every time like that. Remember that episode of Schmoes Know when we did the Mark Wahlberg episode?
I was the only one who was defending Mark Wahlberg. I know that.
But remember the comment section? Maybe because I was looking at the chat and everyone was like, "Oh, "Oh, Mark Wahlberg's trash. He's a horrible human being. You can never
what'd
talk
he
to
do?
him." Because
I
he
know
like beat
the
up
Asian.
Yeah, he beat up an Asian guy.
I mean, that's Boston, you know. I would say it like that. I would say it like that. I would say it like that.
Yo, RB3 is like leaning back in his chair, like straight up. Yo, so
listen, man.
Man. You're doing the whole. Sometimes you gotta beat up some Asian old man.
Yeah.
Sometimes you gotta beat the crap out of an Asian guy, man. You know what I'm saying? That's Boston, bro.
Yeah, it's Boston. Nah, I don't know. I don't know the story behind that, so I can't convict him on that. But like I will say, like I'll make the same point that I made that same night on the Schmoes No Show when we had that, because I remember everybody. What was it, Matt Damon versus Mark Wahlberg or whatever? Yeah. And like everybody.
I was with you, man. I think I was with you.
Yeah, you were probably with me, but
I was gonna say I think I was with you on that.
Literally everybody was like, "Oh, Matt Damon is like the way better actor." I'm like, "Yo, give me one give me one Matt Damon performance that is as good as that moment in Boogie Nights when he is like stoned out of his mind.
He's great in Boogie Nights.
And like literally like
he's great in this too.
Yeah. He's great. And then Andre 3000, of course.
Yeah.
Great too. Yeah.
Garrett Hudlin.
Yeah. It's my boy from Tron Legacy.
Yes. Shout out. No, he's also in friggin' Mudbound.
Oh yeah, he's good in that. Yeah.
And he's also in another one. I forget. Another good. He's in another good movie.
You should watch Tron Legacy though. Tron Legacy is good.
Oh yeah, he was in the freaking. Let me see if I'm right. Yeah, Triple Frontier. Did you see that movie? The Netflix movie.
I see that.
He was good in that, man.
Did you like that movie?
I liked it. Yeah.
What did I watch? Oh, you know what I saw recently? It has nothing to do with anything that we're talking about. But I saw The Long Shot.
Oh, how was that? I want to see that.
Yeah, it was great.
Was it good?
Yeah, it was a romantic comedy. So don't see it with some dudes.
Yeah.
But it was. I mean, if you want to see it with dudes, listen. If you like have at it. But I'm saying like in terms of like it should be seen with a
lady,
a partner.
You know what I'm saying?
Not a lady. If you
a lady.
Yeah. You're trying to say, Ace, you don't support men seeing romantic comedies with men? Yeah.
Is that what you did, RB3? Tell the truth.
I saw it with a homie and a girl, but I saw it with two.
Were you third wheeling?
No, I wasn't third wheeling. No. It wasn't a date. It was just all platonic. But I really didn't know it was a romantic comedy until I saw it. But it's good because it's about politics. Like,
that's what I was gonna say. I thought it was a political movie.
It's a political thing. I mean, there's some like there's some there's one scene that's like, we have to be okay with compromise. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Like, I don't like this, but like otherwise, it was really good. Otherwise,
that's cool,
really
man.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Four Brothers, man. What does this movie mean so much to so many? Is this your favorite? Is this your favorite?
It's not my favorite. I'd probably say like Boys in the Hood and Baby Boy up there. I mean, this is probably the most fun you're gonna have like in a movie. You know what I mean,
I low key like thematically, like what this movie is essentially saying. I mean, even just with the poster, you can just kind of get what they're trying to say. But how do you feel about that? Like the themes in this movie?
It's very cool. I mean, it's very much violent. I mean, I think it's another kind of, I don't want to say adaptation, but another revisioning of blaxploitation almost to some extent. It's different because, it's white dudes and, white dudes are incorporated in this. It's more of where blaxploitation is more of like the solo man, the individual man. This is more of a kind of, multiple people. But it's honestly, I think it plays with a lot of the ideas of genre and all that stuff like really well.
But it also has a lot to say about kind of that attitude of like, a white man and a black man working side by side, right?
Yeah,
you don't feel that?
Well, they're all adopted. They're all adopted.
Yeah, but I'm saying like the movie's called Four Brothers. They're family, and how they don't feel like. They feel like that connection is something that's powerful between the white man and the black man kind of coming together.
Well, they're literally and they're adopted together. They're brothers together. This movie kind of starts when when their mother dies and they're trying to like avenge her death. And this takes place in Detroit, and it's to be said that Detroit's a very heavily black city. And it's a very impoverished city. So I think you're right. It does speak to kind of the hand in hand that black people and white people gotta like hold hands together.
Yeah.
Really, like
I think that's a good message.
Listen, we had a 30-minute conversation like before the cameras even. Well, the cameras are rolling, but we just started talking politics. But I think one of the points that you had made, I don't know if it was in the beginning of this or like during the actual podcast, was how how the struggle for poverty isn't black or white. It's it's just a struggle, and that's something
struggle,
that I wholeheartedly believe in,
if white people realize like, oh no, like we can come together, and stop this corruption that keeps happening. 100%.
So poor whites,
poor white people.
Yeah, we got to band together because the poor blacks, we feel the same hurts.
That's why I love Knock Down the House so much. Yeah, because it kind of shows that different perspective. It goes to Brooklyn and it shows you all the different races, and then it goes West Virginia, which is white as hell.
Yeah,
and it shows you like, hey, there's a ton of poor white people in West Virginia that are suffering too. Like this is real. Like we got to come together and change this shit essentially. Yeah. But
no, this is a really great film. I think like overall, I love a lot of it. I love when I love the dude being thrown out the window in the beginning and having like that whole ass like bone out of his thing. I just everything about it.
Yeah, I low-key enjoy the shit out of this
Taraji P in this, and I don't know. Oh, is Eva Mendes in this too? I can't remember.
Oh man, is she?
But
I don't see.
Like Sofia Vergara.
Oh my God, Sofia Vergara.
Yeah. I met Sofia. I didn't meet her, but I saw Sofia Vergara that one time at Comic-Con. That one time.
Oh yeah, Joe Manganiello. Yeah,
some party or whatever.
That's wild, bro.
Yeah.
I heard like she's Colombian, so I know.
Yeah.
My family knows her.
She was short. I mean, she was really short compared to
of course.
Joe Manganiello.
Well, that guy's like 6'5".
Yeah. But he's like all into like rock music and like metal. She into that? I don't know. I mean, she might just love him so much,
I guess so. Yeah. Hey, I don't know. Shout out to them.
Yeah.
But I heard he's like really nerdy dude. That's all I've heard from him.
He's super. It was super decked out with nerdy shit.
Yeah. Like I remember an interview with that he plays D&D all the time too. Shout out to D&D for anyone who plays that.
There's one part of the party where like he literally started hand DJing because like they were playing like the Dungeons and Dragons theme song music.
Nice.
And he made like a trap version of it or some shit. I don't know, man. That's stupid.
Yeah.
But I was there for it,
That's the problem, man. We got to change that shit.
The only industry party I've been to.
We got to change that shit, bro. Bring hip-hop back to nerd culture.
Yeah,
hip-hop nerd culture.
Well, maybe we shouldn't.
Why not? Why not?
It's something Logic did. Logic is trying to do it, and he's I don't like what he's doing,
Well, why does it have to be Logic? Why can't it be us, bro?
It could be us. Definitely could be us. Yeah. I think this podcast is doing it, man. We're talking about John Singleton.
I feel like, and that's a whole separate conversation, but have you seen The Shop? HBO's The Shop?
Yeah, I only saw the one with Drake. Did you
see? The last one's really good, man. Because it has a conversation about Don Cheadle's in it. Shout out to Don Cheadle. But it really made me feel like, and especially hanging out with my friends, and if any of them are listening, shout out to my homie Leo, but hanging out with him and me realizing like, oh no, like hip hop and nerd culture can go hand in hand.
Could be some crossover.
Yeah, and then hearing from Don Cheadle kind of made me realize like, oh no, man, like people forget how many black people and how many brown people watch these Marvel movies. Like there's a shit ton of them.
Yeah.
Like this is something that can, I don't know. I just feel like this idea of like nerd culture is super, no offense, white. It's super white. Huh. And I still feel like we can do a lot to change that. But anyways, that's a separate conversation.
No, I mean 100%. I definitely feel like they got to do more with incorporating John Singleton's kind of vision of utopia. Oh, by the way,
hip hop, man, hip hop all the way. That's why I love Into the Spider-Verse so much.
Yeah,
because it's fully like, oh, we're hip hop. Like we don't care. Spider-Man's hip hop now.
I will say I did love seeing some event. I saw like I don't know if it was Chris Evans or somebody posted like some behind the scenes video of like Avengers Endgame or whatever.
Yeah,
and
which one?
I forgot which one, but it was like some circle shot or whatever. But I saw like Don. They panned over Don Cheadle and Don Cheadle's wearing a TDE sweatshirt like. We're wearing the War Machine, like, hey, I don't know if it was a helmet or if it was just like makeup or whatever, but it's just so funny to me, like, TDE, what the Avengers Endgame.
I love seeing those behind the scenes ones. I saw one for Game of Thrones right before I came on, where it's homie Riley Ritchie, Jacob Anderson, who plays Grey Worm, and then Natalie Manuel, who plays Missandei, the only two black characters on Game of Thrones, RB3. And they're dancing to, this was when they were shooting it. This was when what's that challenge called? At night, I think
that's how long they shot that shit?
It was long ago. Yeah, they shot this a long time ago. Yeah.
What the heck?
Think about it. It was like 2 years ago.
Yeah, that was like 2 years ago. They're just not putting it out, or?
No, what do you mean?
They're just not putting out these episodes?
Yeah, and that's why they were able to post it now, but that's so old now. But they were doing that challenge. What is that called? I forgot it.
I forgot
but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But they were doing that, and I was like, oh, yeah, the only 2 black people on Game of Thrones. That's the only 2 actors.
That's crazy. They filmed that mug like 2 years ago. That's like New Mutants, man.
It's forever ago.
They filmed New Mutants like in 2016.
But it made me think about also the other Avengers one, the Cinco de Mayo party they threw. Did you see that one?
No, I didn't see that one. No.
So it's also Chris Evans, and he's panning, and they got a mariachi, and they're eating like tacos and taquitos and enchiladas, and they got a mariachi singing in the background, and it's like all the entire cast like sitting down at a table like outside but on a tent, and it's like Nebula and all these other people and Robert Downey Jr. and Jeremy Renner sitting around a table listening to mariachi while they're eating like calmly, and then it turns over to Chris Hemsworth, and he starts going off, and he's like, hey, and he starts doing like a Mexican dance, and I saw that video, and I'm like, you know what? That's awesome. That's the shit. I don't care if this is all like fake, you know, white people bullshit of Cinco de Mayo, because that's all Cinco de Mayo is. Sorry, guys. It's a white people holiday, not a Mexican holiday.
That's messed up, man.
It is though. Like people don't realize like Cinco de Mayo is not. That's for white people to dress up as Mexican people.
Oh, yikes. Yikes.
Yeah, it is a big yikes. But I was still like, I saw that, and I was still like, like pointed at Chris Hemsworth. I'm like, I'm cool with it.
Man.
I like it. Either way, let's move on to his TV stuff. He did Empire. He did American Crime Story.
I used to watch, yeah.
He did Rebel. He did Billions, and he finished off with Snowfall. Which one of those stands out the most to you? Man?
Well, I mean, you know, Empire. I used to watch Empire.
Yeah.
I don't even remember the episode, but I don't even. Honestly,
was that show ever good?
It was good for like the first season. The first season was fire, and then what happened is like the second season they tried to go like super heavy, so they got like they were like,
corny.
They were like, oh yeah, we got to get the best. Like they got John Singleton to direct the episode. They had like every black director like direct like one episode, you know. But it became like too much, you know. Now the American Crime Story one is interesting because if I'm not mistaken, he was nominated for the Emmy for the OJ. This was the OJ.
What episode is this?
The Race Card, I believe that's what it was called. I don't remember exactly.
Because that show was great.
Yeah, I think this is the one when Johnny Cochran was. I think this was one of the first ones with Johnny Cochran in it. But he got nominated for the Emmy for Best Director for that.
Wow, good for him.
So I'm not even remotely sure which episode.
Is this the one where? Is this the one where they change up his house? Because that's.
It could possibly be. Yeah, it could possibly be.
From the picture I see on IMDb, it kind of looks like it could be. But I don't know.
From IMDb, it says as the trial against Chris Darden and Johnny Cochran go head to head in court.
Okay.
So I think that.
And the jury visits the crime scene. So maybe.
Yeah.
I think it's the one where they like. I love that scene, bro.
Which one?
Where they change up, they're like, bro, let's black this shit up, bro.
Yeah.
And they start putting all this pro-black material on OJ's house. Like, that shit was wild.
No, I actually genuinely love this episode.
Yeah.
And I think I love the whole OJ series in general.
Yeah, it's great.
But
shout out to John Singleton, man. He's got a great careure.
Well, I mean, before you leave off that, we got to touch on Snowfall.
Sign off.
Well, Snowfall is actually like
I've never seen it. How is it?
Well, that's for one, I gotta say
Chicago.
Like,
right?
No, it's not Chicago. It's L.A.
It's L.A. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of another show. I'm sorry.
The whole premise of the show is about the beginnings of crack cocaine in L.A. in the 1980s. This one is particularly interesting for me because I actually worked an early screening of Snowfall.
Oh shit, that's right.
Yeah, and then I actually got to meet John Singleton. I actually got to meet John Singleton that day that I worked on
That's amazing. How was he, man?
It was cool, man. I mean, I didn't really get to speak to him. There's a lot of people who were like trying to get around him.
But as long as he's nice, that's cool.
Yeah, he was nice. I had to try and move him. He had like security around him. He kept security on him, but like I had to try and move him out of the theater and like get him out of people's way because like people were like getting in his face and shit.
Yeah,
it was funny. Some lady tried to hand him a business card and he just kind of like dropped it or whatever. It was kind of funny.
That's wild, bro. You low key for 5 minutes. You were John Singleton security, bro.
Yeah,
personal security.
I should have handed him my script the same way you handed Morris.
You were like, hey, no pictures, no autographs. Get away.
I'm sure if he was
security over here.
I'm sure if he was still around, I don't think he would remember me at all.
That's great, man.
But that was
no, keep going.
No, that's my connection.
That's really cool.
So I got to see the pilot. I also saw the pilot for the show that day, and I watched the whole first season of it.
Cool.
But this was the show that he originally created, and
nice.
He had originally directed the pilot for it, and they reshot a lot of pilot.
How is it?
So it's a great show. I mean, the first season was really good.
Is there more?
Yeah, they're starting season 3 in July. So I didn't see the second season. But it's very much about, like I said, the beginnings of crack, how much of an epidemic that was in Los Angeles during the early 80s. This kind of shows the beginnings of it. You know, it plays into the idea of the CIA kind of being behind the involvement and moving the crack into these communities.
Yeah.
And it plays heavily on that idea as well. So it's a really strong show. It's honestly very, very groundbreaking.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
Cool. Any last words on Singleton? Obviously, his career still resonates with so many people.
Yeah.
He opened so many doors. He found so much talent. He incorporated hip hop into movies, which I feel like is so important.
Yeah, and movies incorporated his iconography back in, you know, so it all comes full circle, you know.
Yeah, obviously, shout out to John Singleton. His career, his movies, his legacy is inspiring young filmmakers like RB3. Mm-hmm. Shout out to him, man, and go check out his movies. If you haven't done so already, go check out some of RB3's favorites. And
yeah, no, definitely.
Tweet at us and let us know what you thought of it.
If you're to watch some John Singleton films, I'd highly recommend, you know, Boys in the Hood because that's his first. I recommend Baby Boy because I feel like that's one that is most encompassing of what all of his films kind of go for. And also, I would recommend Four Brothers if you want like a full like action movie type.
And Too Fast, Too Furious, guys, for ludicrous action.
Yeah, that one too. But also see Higher Learning because nobody's seen Higher Learning, and that was a really good one too.
Alrighty, guys, for the Meaning of Podcast, I am Ace.
This is RB3.
And we are peacing out.